Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We are joined by Representative Carlos Guillermo Smith, a very familiar name to Central Florida voters, and somebody who has been serving in the Florida legislature since 2016. He will change district numbers this time, and from District 49 to District 37. And he is being opposed by a Republican whose name is Susan Placentia. And she was not made the decision not to join us today, which is certainly her option. So we're going to be spending some time going over some of the same questions that we've asked many of the other candidates for state legislature, and then we'll give Representative Smith a chance to wrap up. And so without any further ado, I will get started on the questions. And the first question that we've been asking everybody is, starting next year, the flood of federal money that has swollen Florida's budget to beyond $110 million a year will start to dry up. How does Florida cope with that readjustment of its budget picture? And where do you think the priorities of District 37 should be focused?
Well, first of all, thank you, Chris, and to the Orlando Sentinel editorial board for giving voters this option to hear about my advocacy and my priorities for the Seminole County and Orange County based House District 37. As you mentioned, I've been serving in the Florida House for 6 years, and I've seen many different state budgets over those years. This year, we passed a budget that was about $112 billion with a B, which is certainly a lot of money, but it's never enough money to solve all of Florida's problems. As you mentioned, we received an incredible amount of resources from the federal government, thanks to what is known as ARP dollars, American Rescue Plan dollars, that came from Democrats in Congress and the Biden administration to help pay for things like gas tax relief, to help pay for things like $1,000 bonuses for our first responders, police officers, and others. That's about 35% of our state budget and $39 billion. Now, year over year, we usually do have a similar percentage, maybe just a little less, of federal dollars that are a part of our state budget. But this year, we have about $21 billion in reserves as well. So every year when I look at the budget, I see the budget as a values document. How does this budget reflect my values as a representative and the values of my community? We know there's a tremendous amount of need in the state of Florida. And what we've always tried, and I've always tried to prioritize, is making sure that we're spending taxpayer dollars on people that need it the most, on critical government services, because we do believe that government can play a really, really important role in being effective in delivering for people, and making sure certainly that folks have the freedom to be able to live safe and healthy lives in the state of Florida. When we look at this year's budget, for example, there was a lot of things that were very, very important. I already mentioned gas tax relief that we were able to pay for, $1,000 bonuses. But what we also need more of is housing dollars, affordable housing dollars. We also need to make sure that we address the 22,000 person wait list in the state of Florida managed by the Agency for Persons with Disabilities. Many of those folks, in fact, 40% of those Floridians with disabilities have been waiting on that wait list for more than 10 years. So we're going to make difficult decisions for sure, but I think there are additional ways, even if we lose revenue, to bring in additional revenue that was a missed opportunity before. For example, we can expand Medicaid in the state of Florida, as we're able to do under the Affordable Care Act. That's certainly going to help enroll several 100,000 more Floridians who are currently uninsured and don't have health insurance. But it's also a budgetary bonus for us because we would be able to, under a Medicaid expansion in Florida, which we have not yet done because of Republicans in the majority's refusal to do so, we would actually be able to draw down even more federal dollars, more reimbursements for healthcare providers, for hospitals, and it would actually be a budget bonus for us to be able to do that. We can also do things like pass combined reporting, which is basically a policy that would ensure that corporations pay what they owe. Right now, Florida has a tax code that is very much in favor of corporations and gives corporations the opportunity, which they always take, to hide their assets, their taxable assets, in a maze of subsidiaries so that they can avoid taxation and they avoid paying what they owe. Certainly, just some of these ideas are not going to solve all of our problems, but I think everything needs to be on the table to make sure that we are creating a government that works for everybody.
One budget issue that you didn't touch on, and it's something that's very significant at the local level because of the number one industry of Central Florida being tourism. First, I'd like your brief assessment of the effectiveness of Visit Florida, the state's tourism marketing arm, and then I'd like you to address the use of tourist development tax dollars. I know that a lot of people have said that the current restrictions encourage the building of Taj Mahals, but not roads to get to them. So if you could just tell us what your take is on those issues, I'd love to hear them.
Sure. Well, we know that Visit Florida is essentially a marketing agency for the state of Florida to be able to spend public dollars to attract tourists to come to our state, which we want to do because that is going to help boost our economy. We know in Orlando, we have a tourism-based economy, so that's certainly very important for us here in Central Florida and also helps us create jobs. But we also know that since the TDT dollars were created, also known as the bed tax, we know that there are a lot of unmet needs that come as a result of our tourism-based economy. So while I think it's a good thing that we give some dollars, public dollars, to fund Visit Florida, and I think that's very important, I also think that the use of TDT and the spending of TDT, especially here in Orange County, is more flexible. That's why I have co-sponsored legislation that would repeal the current statutory requirement that says 40% of TDT spending has to be on advertising. The reason I feel like that needs to be repealed is that is restricting the ability of local governments like Orange County to be able to do things like build workforce housing, to be able to do things like build infrastructure in the form of public transit and public transportation to support those tourism workers. Right now, so many of those projects are being paid for using property taxes. And if we can open up the ability to spend TDT dollars on more things than just expanding a convention center, which is a great tool that we have in Central Florida, but is also the largest complex of its kind on the planet, I think that we would do right by our constituents at actually solving some of these local issues.
Thank you. Another question I wanted to ask you is about education. Florida has been told numerous times that they already face a crisis in the ability to recruit and hire qualified teachers for our classrooms. There have been some decisions made by the legislature, encouraged by the governor, in terms of salary mandates or requirements. What do you believe Florida should be doing more to recruit, retain, and nurture high-performing teachers?
Well, I'm glad you asked because we've been talking about this so much with our constituents about what to do about the 9,000 or so teacher shortage that we currently have in the state of Florida, which more and more is becoming a self-inflicted crisis. And I believe that there's a lot of really simple solutions that we can put forward to fix this and address this. First of all, teacher pay. Florida is currently 48th in the nation for teacher pay, which is something that we can very easily resolve by doing away with things like teacher bonuses, which really are not effective in recruiting and retaining teachers, and actually would be better served by just increasing not only starting salaries, which the legislature has already done, but specifically increasing salaries for our veteran teachers who have been teaching for so long. Also, we can stop passing divisive bills that are stirring up drama and controversy in the state of Florida. Bills like Don't Say LGBTQ, bills like the Stop Woke Act, which perpetuate a message that is being sent right now to teachers that they are indoctrinators, they are groomers. These are not helpful in helping us recruit and retain teachers. It has resulted in a very, very low teacher morale. And I think one of the other things we can also do is we can take a look at, rather than lowering the standards for what types of teachers and what backgrounds are going to be teaching our kids in the classroom, that we actually just lower the barriers for our certified teachers, doing things like waiving fees, waiving test administration costs that would get teachers certified. That would be a very good way for us to really solve this crisis.
Thank you so much. And I have one more area that I wanted to touch on, and that is something that, when seen in combination with Florida's position as a massively coastal state, there is a big vulnerability to storms, and yet we are now facing a significant crisis in our property insurance market. Where do you think the next big priority should be in trying to get property insurance rates under control, but make sure that Floridians are adequately covered?
Well, that's a really good question. And anyone who has looked at the issue of property insurance and has served in Tallahassee certainly knows that the issue of property insurance is not only urgent, but it's also very complicated. Right now, Floridians are really looking for relief. They are seeing their property insurance rates are soaring. And one of the things the legislature can do to help address this is we need to be able to offer homeowners relief. There should be a cap on the astronomical rates of property insurance increases that are happening not only in the private insurance market, but also in Citizens, which of course is a government-held property insurance provider here in the state of Florida. Over the years, what we've seen is that Tallahassee has unfortunately allowed property insurers to raise their rates. They have also not held insurance companies accountable for doing things like not paying out claims that homeowners are rightfully owed. And I think that these are the types of things that that we should not be doing. We should not be deregulating insurance. We should not be allowing for the property insurance rates to continue increasing without some guardrails. And we need some leadership in Tallahassee that is more interested in protecting consumers and reducing costs than really just being someone that is there to placate the insurance companies, which is what we have now.
Thank you very much. Well, we have covered a lot of the issues that we've covered with other candidates. So I could said I have a list a mile long, but I did want to make sure that voters had a chance to hear you weigh in on some of the bread and butter issues as opposed to a lot of the hyper controversial ones. Um, and I did want to let our readers know we will be making an endorsement in this race. However, our endorsement is not a command. We urge you so much to do your own research. Both candidates in this race have really well-rounded websites. They give you a great idea of where they stand on so many more issues than we've had a chance to cover. And we will have, as always, our excellent coverage of this race as well. So please take a look at both candidates in this race, make up your own mind. And with that, though, I would love to give Representative Smith a chance to let voters know why he is the best choice for the District 37.
Well, thank you again for the opportunity to the Orlando Sentinel editorial board. In this election, there really is a very clear choice for voters. Do they want someone like myself who has been proven to be an effective lawmaker, who can do things like secure millions of dollars in the budget to help people with disabilities and to make sure that we secure housing affordability and teacher pay increases, and we'll continue to work on that, and who will continue to defend our fundamental freedoms like safe and legal access to abortion, making sure that people have the freedom to love who they want to love without discrimination, making sure that people are free to be healthy, prosperous, and safe and not have to work about gun violence in our communities? Or do they want someone who is an anti-abortion extremist, someone who's funded by big utilities and corporate donors, who doesn't stand for anything? That's my opponent. I ask for your vote. I hope that I have earned your support, and I'm committed to continuing to be a champion for so many things, including protecting the environment in the rural boundary, especially in East Seminole County and Orange County. And I look forward to support from the voters in House District 37.